Some wonder, is Alex Bregman going to come back? Well, we know Jose Altuve is campaigning for him like he's running for president. I think Alex Bregman is the greatest Astros third baseman of all time. Eric and I are going to talk about it. What other names are we forgetting about? Let's start right now.
Jainer Diaz, this is Locked On Astros.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Brett H-Town Wheelhouse Chancey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on X at Eric Talk Astros. You can find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. Brett, where can I find you at?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on X, Instagram, and TikTok. They can find me at Astros411 on X and on Facebook. They can also find me on Back to the Bullpen on X, Instagram, TikTok. Not TikTok. No, you can find me on iHeartRadio and YouTube for Back to the Bullpen, where I'm always positive, always Stros.
Hey guys, thank you for making us your first listen, whether it's the off season, regular season, preseason, postseason for all 2 games of it. Wherever it is, we're always here for you all season long. We are the Locked On Astros podcast. We appreciate you. Go and make us your first listen on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. Go ahead and check us out. Go ahead and subscribe to us. We're trying to get to 15,000 subscribers before the end of the season. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. So, Brett, I have a feeling that this whole offseason, until the Alex Bregman decision is going to be made, I know people across the country are wondering who's going to be the next president, but in Houston, we're wondering who's going to be the next Astros third baseman, because Alex Bregman has represented a big change to the Astros franchise. Yes, George Springer was a big piece of the Astros puzzle, but at the same time, when Alex Bregman came in, he kind of gave this stability of leadership to this team. He was this consistent, great defense. He offered the power. That's something that the Astros have had at times at third base. But there's a lot of intangibles with him that you can't monetize. And it's just you can't put dollars and cents to. And that's what the Astros have to consider. It's do you want to see him in pinstripes? Do you want to see him in Boston? Do you want to see him anywhere else? It's just this is something that Dana Brown needs to decide. So, Brett, what do you think the value is outside of money of Alex Bregman?
Oh, well, I think the value is his leadership. I think he showcased that when he would do mound visits with the pitchers. The pitchers talked about how incredibly cerebral he was during those timeouts, whether the pitching coach was out there or not. Right. So he acted kind of like a mentor, especially to some of the younger pitchers, and they appreciate his insight. As a hitter, he's like, hey, look, I know what this guy's looking for. I know what your plan is. Maybe do this, maybe do that. And of course, they never shared the specifics of what was said, but even Jainer Diaz talked about when we interviewed him before the season started, how Alex Bregman loved getting in there and acting like he was a catcher, and he liked hanging around the pitchers. I just think that type of person, someone that has a connection with Altuve, someone that I think when he leaves, the reverberations of his absence will be felt deeper than, don't laugh at me when I say this, deeper than Maldonado, Correa, Cole, and Springer, all those guys combined, just because of he's been here every single time they went to the ALCS. He's been here. I mean, just like, Correa, when you take someone number 1 overall, you expect that person to stay with that club. Alex Bregman just seems like he fits in Houston, and I've tried picturing him in other uniforms. Someone asked me this weekend, what if Seattle offers him a ton of money? I'd be like, you know what my counter argument would be to the Astros? Do you want to be a perpetual loser? Because that's pretty much what's going to happen when you go to Seattle. They're going to, the Tigers got further than the Mariners are able to get. So, no, he's not going to Seattle, but I think what he brings on the field mentally, the camaraderie, the relationship he has with the Latino players as well. I mean, his connection, not only to the city, there are a lot of things you can't replace. I mean, and I'm not even getting into the defensive metrics and advanced numbers right now, but outside of those things, there's so many things before you even get to the things that they look at for contracts that I think it would be a gaping hole to have him not on this team.
Yes, I agree with you. And defense alone, I think, is a reason to sign him. But he's also got a bat, and that's what makes him valuable. He plays great defense, and we saw. Granted, it was a bad situation where Shea Whitcomb came in. This was kind of the final hurrah for Alex Bregman. The coach took him out. He got his chance to get his final goodbye from the fans. And then Shea Whitcomb came in and it's like, oh, crap. Does this mean I'm the third baseman? I'm the captain now? And maybe the nerves are up. Maybe he was just trying to be perfect. He had the 4 errors in the game. And it just shows how valuable he is as a third baseman. Go and put up those stats you had, Brett, about his career WAR overall.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm right here. I mean, it's pretty simple. His defensive WAR 32.6 for his career and overall 39.7. Eric, back in 2020, he was at what, 25?
It was 22.7 for his overall WAR. I'm looking at an article from the best third baseman Astros history. None of those players, their stats have been updated because they've been retired for a while. But Alex Bregman's career has kept on going. We would love for it to keep on going with the Houston Astros, but it's kind of out of our hands. But I think if Jim Crane is very serious about extending this run, trying to get back to the playoffs, Alex Bregman is somebody to build around. Third base is a premium position. I know a lot of people say, well, so is Kyle Tucker. He plays right field. You can get a young player to play right field. You can get somebody to come in and do what Spencer Arrighetti. He may get some hiccups, but eventually he'll turn into what Spencer Arrighetti did, what Hunter Brown did. But to have a premium third baseman like you do, it's going to be rough. And the fact, when you looked at the free agent market, we'll talk about this in a second. I know you got some defensive numbers on the free agents, but just looking at the list, there's not that many players out there that's like, oh, yeah, I've got to have this guy. Right. There's a couple guys with club options, Brett, that could be interesting. One guy, I'm pretty sure they're Guardians. I believe he was traded to the Guardians. Or maybe no, it was the Orioles. I doubt that. No. I think he's still with I'm thinking Eloy Jimenez, but Yon Moncada is somebody that maybe, I don't know if the White Sox, if they're, it's $25 million club option. They may say, you know what? We lost 100 games. You're not worth $25 million, dude. So,
well, Matt Chapman's worth 25. Yeah. But yeah, so real quick, before we get into our next segment, we're asking, the first question is, how much is he worth beyond the money? When it does come to the money, the starting point is 6 years, 151. If you pay him 30 for 5, okay, that's 150 right off the top. I think you pay him for 5, you give him a 6-year player option. But I think Alex could get between 33 and 35 million. Would anybody here listening be willing to pay him 34 million? That would be 170 for 5 years, give him a player option. And if he meets certain criteria, if he has certain accomplishments, you could even back in this contract. You could start it cheap, and then where he's making 40, or I'm just saying, like, you could make it to where he's making a lot at the end, keep it cheap at the beginning because you got others to sign. So that's definitely something we need to look at. The starting point, the floor, is Matt Chapman, and it goes from there.
So in a second, we're going to come back. But while we're away for a second, I want your help. I've got the list in front of me, but I want you to list all the top in the chat. Those of y'all here, list all the top third basemen that you can remember. This is a pop quiz. We're both teachers. Pop quiz. Who are the top third baseman in Astros history? Let's see how many of them you get. So thank you for making Locked On Astros podcast your first listen every day.
This episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Are you taking the dream vacation, whether it's this summer, this spring, this fall? It doesn't matter what time of year. Why? Because you can stock up on all your favorite food items, no matter where you're traveling, no matter what the trip. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, the flight you've been eyeing, and fancy dinners that you've been wanting to go out to. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, and it can go to PayPal, go on gift cards, simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. You can save on over 2,400 brands, over 1,000 retailers, your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, and so much more. Ibotta right now is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA on the Google Play or App Store. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB today.
Hey guys, thank you for making the Locked On Astros podcast your first listen every day. Whether it's on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to us. Make us first listen on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Go and check us out. If you want to watch us on your big screen, on your projector, wherever you want to listen to us, you can go and check us out on your Amazon Fire TV stick. All you have to do is just download the free channels app, check out baseball, search, scroll through, find the Houston Astros app, and you can go and watch Brett and I on your big screen. So before the break, I did ask y'all to kind of do some research. I see a couple of answers. We'll go ahead and talk about those in a second. But Brett, before we do that, let's go ahead and continue the conversation about Alex Bregman. So the third baseman free agents, I'm looking at Spotrac, and this is based on their salary and the top third baseman available. Alex Bregman, of course, he's the best out there. His market value is probably, like you said, about 33 million or so. I guess, wait, let me see what his market value is. It's actually a little bit lower. They're saying it's about 30 million. But the next one in line is Yoan Moncada. If the club declines his $25 million club option, which is option, last year he made $14 million. So for a team that lost 100 games, that is a option. Moncada gets hurt a lot. He is a good power hitter. So that could be somebody the Astros could look at. Eugenio Suárez is somebody that we've talked about before. So there's other names out there. Then you've got the rest of them. So those are the top guys. So Brett, go and talk about the defensive metrics.
Well, Eugenio Suárez, I'm not looking at his stats right now. I don't know where he is. I can look him up real quick. The first thing that comes to mind for him is not necessarily the replacement at third. Actually, he was 5.1 defensive WAR. He's 25.7 for his career, and he's 29.3 WAR overall. So in 2023, he was 10.1. It was his best year defensively. But looking at his numbers, he has the potential to hit around 270, 280. That's not where he is because he's a career 248. He hits a lot of home runs. He's hit 30 plus home runs in 6 seasons. So he's got pop. This guy has played DH a few times, so you can kind of move him around. He's a right-handed hitter. He is 5'11", so he's right around the size that Bregman is. He's a little bit older, 3 years old. He's 33, so you probably get him on a shorter deal. He just got through. He has a club option in 2025, but pretty much I believe he's going to be a free agent. He had a 7-year, $66 million deal. He is Venezuelan, so you got that going for him. We've got some Venezuelans on the team, most famously with Altuve. Now, Moncada, you mentioned him. He is a guy that when he came up, he came up with the Red Sox, and before he hit the major league field, there was a lot of talk about him. And this guy in his first 3 years, Eric, had a negative defensive WAR. You want to talk about a drop off? This guy's defensive WAR the last 2 seasons in a row, 0.8 combined, not even one. And 2022, well, 2022 is best year, 5.8, 2019, 5.0. This is not a guy that I see the Astros going after and getting because, yeah, he is 29. I mean, who knows? Maybe he comes here. Maybe he turns things around. But you're not looking for a reclamation project. You're replacing Alex Bregman. You don't have a Jeremy Pena, although Jeremy Pena has not replicated his 2022 postseason self consistently as we would like him to. His glove is still elite. His glove and what he does on the field is still there. And that's where you're going to feel, I think, the biggest sting. You can go out and get a good bat. I mean, I wouldn't mind Suárez. You're just not going to he's a high strikeout guy. You're going to have a lot of people. The first thing they're going to do, and what is going to be the toughest thing, if Alex Bregman is not an Astro, is they're going to say, oh, Alex Bregman didn't do that. Or maybe the guys that wanted Alex to leave are like, yep, Alex didn't hit 28 home runs 2 years in a row. Or there's going to be critics either way. I just think, look, I think you pay him. I know everybody's like, well, what about Kyle Tucker? What about Kyle Tucker? Let's look. I mean, let's look at postseason. Has Kyle Tucker really performed in the postseason? He really hasn't. I know this year he was coming off basically a fractured leg, but in the postseason, Eric, he hasn't really done anything. And so where can you depend on the guy? Yes, he's a great regular season guy. I love Kyle Tucker. I think he's a 5-tool player. But if you're going to commit that kind of money to Kyle Tucker, you're going to have him step up in the postseason. We've seen Alex Bregman step up in the postseason.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't have Moncada on here and Suárez, but I think you already read their stats. But outside of those two guys, these are the free agents and their actual WAR, not their defensive WAR. But Alex Bregman had a 4.1 last year overall. Paul DeJong had a 1.7. Kevin Newman had a 1.4. Donovan Solano had a 0.8. Abraham Toro had a 0.7. Gio Ursula had a 0.7. Enrique Hernandez, Kike Hernandez, as we call him, 0.7. Garrett Hampson, who was a top prospect for many years there, 0.5. Whit Merrifield, we all remember that name. Complained about not getting to the All-Star team, 0.4. Ahmed Rosario, 0.3. Kevin Biggio, 0.1. I could keep on going, but you see where we are. We're in a situation where unless the two the clubs non-tender them or don't pick up their options, you're going to be stuck with a bunch of nobodies. So the Astros have got to decide, well, do we have somebody in-house? We'll talk about that in a little bit. Or are we going to go with somebody out-house? So Brett, I did mention, let's go and talk about where Bregman is in terms of best Astros third baseman of all time. Some of the fans have been listing the players in the chat. Who do you think outside of Bregman? Of course, he's number one. Who do you think the number two was? If you haven't seen the list, but who would you think it would be?
The number 2 third baseman has got to be either, I think it's got to be Doug Radar. It's either got to be Doug Radar or Ken Caminiti, Morgan Ensberg.
Ken Caminiti was number 2. So Doug Radar was number 3.
Okay. Well, I always knew it was kind of a toss-up between those two. And look, no disrespect to Ken or Doug or anybody, but Alex has done more than any third baseman, and I just think he's become a defensive mastermind there at third.
Yeah, so if you're looking at what Caminiti did with the Astros, he batted 264, 330, 402 on base, slugging percentage with 103 home runs, 546 RBIs. That's the second most by Astros third baseman. So Doug Radar was third. He had more RBIs, 600, and Gold Gloves 5 than any other third baseman in Astros history. So he was the greatest defensive third baseman in club history. So I know that we remember Ken Caminetti as more of a defender. He had that power arm. He threw his body everywhere, hence all the injuries later in his career. Probably what he did to his body was not helping. So if I had to say who is number 4, who would you say? You said his name already.
Morgan Ensberg.
Morgan Ensberg was number 4. He in his career with the Astros, where is it?
What about Enos Cabell? Enos Cabell's not even top 4, and he's in the Astros Hall of Fame before Morgan.
Nope. So they don't have like Ensberg's total stats, but he did win a NL Silver Slugger award and finished 4th in MVP and what season in 2005. So he we all remember him as this guy that struggled a little bit, then he got off to his power hit. So number 5 is Phil Gardner. I saw Phil Gardner, a lot of people mentioning him. His 12.3 WAR is the 5th highest among all Astros third basemen all time. Of course, we remember him as the manager, but we also remember him. Well, I didn't get to watch him much, but Scrap Iron. I didn't pay much attention to the Astros back then because my family wasn't into it. So those are top 5. So you mentioned Enos Cabell. He's another honorable mention. So you haven't mentioned the other 2. I saw the other names in here. One of them played a role similar to what Jeff Blum did, and one played on the Houston Astros from 1962 to 1968. So we'll go and continue this conversation next on the Locked On Astros podcast.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. You've heard me talk about FanDuel, and if you took advantage of the line, the 38.5 points for the Texans versus the Patriots, wow, boy, if you took the over, man, you got it, because the Texans alone put a 40-plus spot on the Patriots. It was another great win. The Texans are 5-1. So NFL fans, you can start this season with big returns on FanDuel. So when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You don't have to go to all these different places, download all these different apps, get all these different memberships to these different TV services. It's just right there. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 guaranteed in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet. Go to FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook.
Okay, this is a good guess, but it wasn't Sean Barry. Welcome back to the Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. He is Brett Chancey. Thank you for making us your first listen on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Yes. Did you cheat during the commercial?
No, because you said Jeff Blum like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, meaning Jeff Blum played more than one position, right?
Yes, but he was also kind of a utility player. Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Well, the ultimate utility player in Astros history is none other than Billy Spires, correct?
Yes.
I mean, he was like Dubon is like super Spires. Like Billy Spires, he did everything. And right. Yeah. So yeah, when you at first I didn't know. And someone mentioned Aspermonte. I think he's the guy in the 62 to 68 thing that you mentioned. But yeah, when you said Jeff Blum, I was like, wait, Jeff Blum, who would compare? I was like, oh, because you know what? Randomly, for some reason, I always remember things like guys like Spike Owen, guys that played like with the Expos.
Sid Bream.
Well, hey, dude, Spike Owen actually pulled a guy out of the stands in the Astrodome. This guy threw beer on him in the batter's box. He was standing on the Expos logo because he used to have each team's logo. And he turned around, and yelling at this guy, and this guy was yelling at him. He literally pulled him out of the stands onto the field. Afterwards, Spike Owen apologized. He felt bad, but he was like, I didn't know what to do.
I'm old enough to remember that Sid Bream stands for team. Remember that slogan that
Yeah.
players would say. But yeah, there've been a lot of interesting characters in Astros history, and Alex Bregman has been an interesting character. He's that guy that came up, he pompous, he was an arrogant guy, and I felt like when he kind of calmed down, he had his kid. He just kind of lost that little edge a little bit. Sometimes you see it a little bit more. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. Sometimes you get older, you're not that. I'm not going to say he was a punk kid, but you know what I'm saying. He came up with all this arrogance, and that kind of fueled his fire. And so now he's just got to make that decision. Do I want to stay here where I've consistently gone to the playoffs? Even this year, he didn't go far in the playoffs, but he still went to the playoffs. And I don't know what the Astros need to do at this point. We have all offseason to figure this out, and so does Dana Brown. But I thought they had all the pieces, and Alex Bregman is one of those pieces. I think getting off to the bad start to the season, that didn't help. And when you're not one of the the top two teams, you don't have that bye week that hurts you. You have to play the wild card games. But the Tigers did get eliminated. I saw that coming. The Guardians just have too much pitching. You can't go with that relievers, the openers for that long and expect to win.
Well, yeah, because you have an overexposure issue. That's why they're relievers. That's why they're effective. But the more you use them, the less of a puzzle it is to solve what these guys are doing, and they're worn down. And because of the way they treat relief pitchers this year, they don't have the stamina. I mean, literally, Mike Stanton, he would pitch multiple days in a row and not even blink. Wouldn't be like, oh, coach, he said, I would never tell Bobby Cox, I pitched the last 2 games in a row. Like, he's like, all right, let's go. Like, he was ready to pitch every day, and guys don't do that anymore. They've conditioned the guys away from that, which I think is part of the reason why you have some of these injuries, is because these guys aren't used to throwing. And you do have guys that the focus is on spin and velo, Eric, and they're basically emptying the chamber before they even really get into the heat of competition. You're like throwing 8 to 10 bullets in the bullpen. You're not supposed to waste your bullets in the bullpen. You're supposed to get warm and then use your bullets when you're on the mound. And so, but yeah, I didn't think the Tigers would last. I hope the Guardians give the Yankees a run for their money, but Major League Baseball is hoping for a New York, LA World Series, because right now viewership is up 41% simply because of Ohtani being in the playoffs. And right now, LA is winning their first game right now, 6-0 over the Mets. They have only given up 2 hits to the Mets. So the Dodgers are taking care of business, and they look like they're not slowing down anytime soon. But good for the Mets, Ryan Stanek and Matan, who are both former Astros, on that Mets team.
Just imagine, like we talked about, just imagine if that team with Mike Trout and Ohtani with the Angels would have made it to the postseason. How much attention that would have brought to the Angels if they could have just put it together. And I think at some point, once Trout, hopefully he recovers from his meniscus issues, but I really think he needs a fresh start. But with Bregman, it's at this point, it's like, who are you going to replace him with? If there's not any options outside of Houston, what about inside Houston? I know everybody's like, I don't want Shea Wickham at third base. Well, he's probably going to be the first choice. I mean, that was one game. For the most part, he was efficient. He played. He's not Alex Bregman. Don't get me wrong, but he is an adequate third baseman. They'll probably give him a shot out of spring training if Alex Bregman does not return. Bryce Matthews is another guy. He's going to play winter ball. Arizona Fall League, I believe. And they played him a little bit at third base, so he could be option down the road. Let's say Shea Whitcomb is having too many errors or is not hitting where he's supposed to be.
Well, they had Zach DeCenzo was actually in 2024 going into the season was considered the top third base prospect. And Will Wagner right behind him, who is now playing for the Blue Jays and doing quite well. That's the thing, Eric. That's the problem. You don't have a Jeremy Pena. And everybody's saying, well, what are you going to pay him? And if you pay him, what about these other guys? Who's harder to replace, Alex Bregman or Kyle Tucker? I'm not advocating for not signing Kyle Tucker, because he's the guy that I said, if you break the bank for one guy, maybe the Kyle Tucker is that guy. He's a 5-tool player. Because I don't know, man. I'm glad I'm not a GM. I am glad I'm not making these decisions. But Dana Brown and the Astros, I promise you, are not going to leave any stone unturned. And the way that Altuve is advocating for Bregman to be here, I think that increases his chances, but we don't know what the other clubs are going to offer. They have until the end of the World Series to have exclusive talks with Bregman.
And a few days after. Yeah.
Well, once the World Series is over, then it's pretty much fair game after that. Once
I think there's a certain window, and then the free agency, as soon as the World Series ends, then it's a free agency begins. I think there's a 3-day window where you can negotiate with your.
I think it's 3 to 5 days. But what I'm saying is, while they're in the playoffs, they need to.
Right.
They need.
And I saw somebody Bregman and Pena made a commercial for his salsa today for HEB. Maybe it wasn't commercial, but it was something on social media. And everybody's like, well, he's still making commercials. He's still wearing an Astros hat. He's staying in Houston. So, I mean, hopefully that's the case, but it's
Those
not really up to
made before the season started, people.
Okay. Yeah. That's I would think that too, but don't believe what you see on social media. And to close the show, I just want to ask y'all, and y'all can comment after the show ends too. Can you replace what he does with anybody? Is Alex Bregman just that type of a player where you really can't replace him? So just ask yourself that. You can comment after the show. We can go and talk about this next show. That's the great thing about the Locked On Astros podcast, is we're here. We can continue this discussion next time. So Brett, this was a great show. Thank you as always for joining me, and everybody else for joining us. We are the Locked On Astros podcast. Go and subscribe to us. Make us your first listen on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Go and check us out. And Brett, what did we say?
Go Astros.
We'll see you tomorrow.
You wanted to say it.
Go Astros!
I knew it. It's the same thing.